Good morning, Year 6, and this is the start to our week 3. In numeracy today we're going to be looking at the topic that we started towards the end of last term, and that is the topic of measurement. Last term we were able to talk about 3 dimensions of measurement in length, length being the first dimension, width being the second dimension, and depth being the third dimension. So now we're just going to take it back to the first step of length, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail. For your exams, what you'll need to pay particular attention to in the topic of measurement and length in itself are the conversions and the units of measurement. And if you remember correctly, the units of measurement that we use here is starting from the largest to the smallest, the most common ones. A kilometer, that's the SI unit is SM. The kilometer, the meter, the centimeter, and the millimeter. And those are the 4 units of measurement in the metric system that you will need to focus on the most. I know that we did look at some of the larger ones like decameter, hectometer, and things like that, but those, you shouldn't worry about focusing on those, because we want to pay attention to the 4 most common ones, the ones that we use in everyday life. Now, one of the most common units of measurement that we use in day-to-day life is this. This is a meter ruler. It measures 1 meter, and it has got 100 centimeters in it. Now, it doesn't matter which part of the world you go to, 1 meter will always equal 100 centimeters. And 100 centimeters is always going to be the same value. It is always going to be that amount, 100 of those. Now, this is a 30 centimeter ruler, and quite obviously, if I put it up against this, it will stop measuring. It's a bit longer, the metal part is a bit longer, but it will stop measuring at 30 centimeters. This is what we call a standard international unit. Now, once upon a time when people didn't have a standard international unit to measure with, they might have used the span of their hand, they might have used their foot, they might have used the width of their arms, okay, to try and measure with. Can you think of the problem with that unit of measurement? For example, if we have got point A and we have got point B, and I asked each person in the class to measure the distance between point A and point B using their hand span alone, can you predict any problems with that? Like this: 1, 2, 3, and the length of my thumb. Obvious problem. My hand is bigger than your hand is smaller than somebody else's hand, or bigger than somebody else's hand, and I will not be surprised that we will have, so this is 2 hands plus 1 thumb. That's how long it is from point A to point B. Obviously, the problem with that is the difference in units of measurement, being the space from fingertip to thumb tip, would vary, which means everybody would have a different answer. So whose is correct? Everybody's is correct. It's a hand span. Whose is wrong? Nobody's, because you've used your hand span. However, when we start to apply that practically in life, we run into a mass of problems. Imagine if we were building our house, our favorite example, and on one side of the house we had me measuring 30 hand spans for the length of the doorway, and then on the other side of the room we had maybe somebody like Kalenga with small hands measuring 30 hand spans for the length of the door. Whose door is going to be bigger? We both measured 30 hand spans, but somebody's door is going to be looking really small, somebody else's is going to be looking really big. Now imagine we're going vertically. Now we've got to measure 100 hand spans to the ceiling, and my hand spans are used to measure one side of the door, the classroom, and kalingas, handspans are used to measure the other side of the classroom, the other wall. You're going to have a very lopsided building. And for this reason, it was discovered and agreed upon that we needed to have a standard unit of measurement. And the metric system was born. In America, they use the imperial system, where they use yards, inches, and miles. Here, in Africa, we use the metric system, kilometers, meters, centimeters, and millimeters. And standard, international, means that it is the same. Standard, the same, international, around the world. You'll not find a centimeter longer or shorter anywhere else in the world. They are standardized. Now, we also have different methods of measuring. For example, this is called a click wheel. And if you look carefully on it, start with the arrow at the bottom, just where it clicks, there, okay? And if you look, as it goes all the way around, when it gets back to that pointy arrow at the bottom, listen, it clicks again. This click wheel measures exactly 1 meter on its circumference. That's the distance on its outermost edge of the circle. And every single one of these measurements there is a centimeter. Now it might seem weird that a straight edge can be measured by a circle, but think about this being used to measure the length of a soccer field. You want to mark out your soccer field. Instead of taking a whole bunch of these and laying them down edge to edge and putting your finger on one end and then moving it along to measure the next edge, you can simply use something like a click wheel, where you start on one side. Let's see if this will work on the board. It won't. And then as you go and measure along, it clicks every meter. So this is easy for you to do. As you walk around, you can walk around the classroom, you can walk around your house, around the field, and every click it makes, you just got to count. That's 1 meter. That's 2 meters. 3 meters. 4 meters. And that's an easy way to measure distance. Now imagine you were going to be walking a long way. Would this be the best way to measure that? Thankfully today we've got other ways to measure that. We've got GPS, we've got vehicles with odometers in them that count the wheel rotations as you drive along, so you don't have to have such an old idea in your modern day vehicle, but the idea is exactly the same. Now on the other hand, imagine we had point A and we had point B right there. What would you use to measure? A centimeter might be too big. Okay, it's even, the gap between there is even smaller than a centimeter. That is where our next unit of measurement comes in. You'll see that in that 1 centimeter there are 10 millimeters. And that's about as small as you need to worry about going. It does get smaller than that if you look at that part of the ruler on top there. It's got 0.5 millimeters. But at this stage, you only need to be worrying about 1 centimeter equaling 10 millimeters. 1 meter equaling 100 centimeters. 1,000 meters equaling 1 kilometer. And we get that from our prefixes. Kilo, meaning 1,000. Cent, meaning 100. Okay? Now, the confusing thing is that milli in millimeter doesn't necessarily mean millions. So, you're going to go through some of the video clips that we watched at the end of last term, and you're going to make more detailed notes. You're going to explain why we need a standard unit of measurement. You're also going to have to come up with ideas of where you would use a millimeter, what you would use to measure a millimeter with, and when you would stop using millimeters and then move on to centimeters. You'd also then need to think, when do I stop using centimeters and move to meters, and same for kilometers. You wouldn't want to measure how far you walk from home to school in millimeters. It wouldn't make sense to even use centimeters. Depending on where you live, you might not even use meters. Okay. By the same token, you're not going to measure how long your fingernail grows using kilometers. Because yes, you might have the same measurement, but it is going to be an extremely small number with tiny, tiny decimals involved. So there is a little bit of problem solving that goes into this topic. You need to be able to understand when to use a certain unit of measurement. So the worksheets that you're going to work on today will give you practice in converting those units of measurement, and then as we go on with this topic today and tomorrow and the next day, we're going to also start to apply and solve problems with these units of measurement, knowing when to use the certain unit of measurement. Okay, I hope this is helpful, and I look forward to seeing the work that you produce.